Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei Awakens Void Fang Dragon. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Issei Hyoudou stood in the clearing, his fists striking the tree repeatedly. His knuckles had long since started to bleed, but he didn't care. This pain was nothing compared to what he had endured before. He had been training for months in this isolated part of the underworld, pushing his body and mind beyond their limits. The memory of the girls he loved, Rias, Akino, Asia, and the others had fueled his determination. He wanted to protect them, to become stronger for them. But now, the months of isolation were over. Today, he was finally returning home. He hoped they hadn't worried too much. It had been a while. They would probably scold him for disappearing like that. A small smile tugged at his lips at the thought. Rias would likely be the first to lecture him, while Akino might tease him instead. And Asia, sweet, innocent Asia, she would probably cry tears of joy when she saw him again. They had all grown so close, a bond that transcended friendship. He couldn't wait to see them, to feel their warmth again. As Issei made his way back to Kuo, his heart quickened with anticipation. However, as he neared the mansion, something felt off. The mansion stood still and silent in the late afternoon sun. Usually, there would be laughter or voices inside, but today, there was an unsettling quiet. He approached the house cautiously, sensing a strange tension in the air. Just before entering, he heard voices, familiar voices mixed with others he didn't recognize. He frowned and, moving silently, crept closer to the open window. Rias's voice was soft, but a deep male voice followed, expressing admiration. Issei froze, his heart stopping in his chest. That voice was unfamiliar. Akino's tone followed, filled with an alluring quality that twisted Issei's stomach in confusion. Why would she? Shaking his head, Issei peered through the window, his breath catching in his throat at what he saw. Rias, Akino, Asia, Zenobia, Kuroka, Rosweiss, Ravel, all of them were together in the living room, entangled with three unknown men. The sight hit him like a punch to the gut. His vision blurred with disbelief. What was happening? He felt his blood run cold. His heart, which had been beating excitedly just moments ago, now pounded in his chest for a different reason. One of the men whispered Akino's name, his hands moving over her as she smiled back with a playful expression. Issei's mind went blank. This couldn't be real. No way. He wanted to storm in, to confront them, to demand answers. But his body wouldn't move. His feet felt like lead, and his heart shattered into a million pieces as the betrayal settled in. Every single one of them, the girls he loved, were with other men. Together. Without him. How could they do this? Drake's voice growled in the back of his mind, filled with rage. After everything he had done for them, after all the battles and sacrifices, they repaid him like this? Why would they do this? Issei's thoughts were a jumbled mess. Anger, sorrow, confusion all swirled inside him, a storm threatening to explode. He couldn't bear to look any longer. Without a word, he turned away from the window and stumbled into the forest, his heart breaking more with every step he took. His mind raced, a blur of emotions he couldn't control. His training, his sacrifices, the battles he fought for them, was it all for nothing? He wasn't enough for them. Had he ever been? Issei walked deeper into the woods, not knowing where he was headed. He just knew he had to get away. Away from the sight that tore him apart. He couldn't face them. Not after this. He didn't want to hear any excuses or lies. He couldn't handle it. Unbeknownst to him, two sets of eyes followed him from a distance, one pair deep and calculating, the other wide and filled with guilt. From the shadows, Koneko and Sona quietly followed Issei. Kaneko's ears twitched with anxiety as she observed him. Issei looked completely broken, Sona thought, her voice laced with concern as she watched the boy they both admired. She had sensed something was off with the others, but to betray him like this was unimaginable. Koneko clenched her fists, guilt gnawing at her insides. He didn't deserve this. After everything he had done for them, they still. Her voice faltered. She had always known the depth of Issei's heart, the loyalty he showed to those he loved. But Koneko, more than anyone, knew how much she had hurt him in the past too. She had never dared to confess her feelings to him, too scared of rejection, too scared of admitting how much she had pushed him away. "You still haven't told him." Sona's voice was calm but sharp. Kaneko's ears flattened slightly. "I couldn't. Not after the way I treated him before. And now it's even worse. He's been betrayed by everyone. What right do I have to say anything to him?" Sona's gaze softened slightly. "You have more of a right than you think. You were never part of this betrayal." Koneko stayed silent, her heart heavy. She knew that she cared about Issei more than she had ever let on. But the timing had never been right. Now, it felt like it was too late. They continued to follow him, keeping a safe distance. Neither of them could let Issei disappear into the darkness of his emotions. Issei walked further into the forest, his chest heaving as he tried to suppress the pain swelling inside him. Every memory he had with them, Rias, Aquino, Asia, Zenobia, felt like lies now. His life, his purpose, felt like it was crumbling beneath his feet. "Issei," Drake's voice echoed in his mind, this time softer, more cautious. "I know this hurts. But you need to stay strong. You can't let this destroy you." "Destroy me? It already has, Drake." "You are stronger than this. You've always been stronger." Issei shook his head, trying to clear his mind. He couldn't think. He couldn't breathe. He just needed to get away. As he continued to walk, he didn't notice Koneko and Sona slowly closing the distance behind him, both determined to help him but unsure of what to say when they finally caught up. Issei's footsteps were slow and heavy, each one feeling like it carried the weight of 1,000 broken promises. The forest around him was quiet, save for the occasional rustling of leaves underfoot. He couldn't stop replaying the scene in his head, the girls he loved, all betraying him with those faceless strangers. His heart clenched with every step. How could they do this to him? He wasn't sure where he was going, but it didn't matter. Anywhere was better than staying in Kuo, better than facing the pain that had gripped his heart. Behind him, Koneko and Sona watched in silence, hesitant to approach. Kaneko's usually calm demeanor was shattered by the sight of Issei in such obvious distress. She had never seen him like this before, completely broken. Sona quietly observed, her eyes narrowing as she expressed concern about Issei's state of mind, insisting that he shouldn't be left alone. Koneko nodded slowly, her heart aching. She had never told Issei how much he meant to her, always staying quiet out of fear after how she had treated him when they first met. Now, watching him in pain, she regretted every moment of silence. Issei, lost in his thoughts, hadn't noticed them yet. He continued walking, Drake's voice softly echoing in his mind, offering support. Issei's thoughts were bitter, filled with anger and sorrow as he reflected on the betrayal he had experienced. The image of Rias and Aquino with those men flashed in his mind, igniting a fire of anger within him. Suddenly, a soft voice broke through his thoughts. He recognized Kaneko's voice immediately and turned around to see her standing a few feet away, her usual stoic expression marred by uncertainty. Beside her, Sona stood with arms crossed, her expression unreadable but her eyes focused on him. Koneko hesitated, her ears twitching nervously. She explained that they had followed him because they couldn't leave him alone after what had happened. Issei frowned, confusion mixing with his sadness as he asked if they knew what had occurred. Sona confirmed that they had seen everything, the betrayal, and acknowledged that they had sensed something was off with the others for a while, but this was unforgivable. Issei felt his chest tighten. Knowing that others had witnessed the betrayal made it feel even worse, as if it solidified the reality he was trying to deny. He insisted that they shouldn't have followed him and that there was nothing they could say to make things better. He turned away, staring into the distance, not wanting to talk or think. Koneko took a tentative step forward, her heart pounding. She struggled to find the right words but eventually expressed her regret for how she had treated him when they first met, admitting that he mattered to her. Issei blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in her voice. He turned to meet her gaze, finally looking into her golden eyes. He shook his head, insisting that she didn't need to apologize and that the fault lay with him for not being enough for them. Koniko's heart clenched at his words. She had never seen Issei like this, so defeated and lost. It hurt to see him in such pain, and the guilt she felt for her past mistakes weighed heavily on her. Koneko asserted that he was wrong, stating that he had always been more than enough and that it was the others who couldn't see it. Sona nodded in agreement, reinforcing that Issei had always given everything he had to those girls, and their betrayal didn't reflect his worth. Issei looked between them, the weight of their words settling in. He wanted to believe them, but the hurt was too raw. Koneko stepped closer, apologizing for not expressing her feelings sooner. She admitted her fear of not being deserving of him after her past actions. Issei's eyes widened in surprise at her confession. Koneko revealed that she cared about him more than just as a friend, and her feelings had been hidden out of fear. Issei struggled to process her words. Koneko cared about him? In that way? Sona then softened her tone, assuring Issei that he was a good person who fought for those he cared about, encouraging him not to let the betrayal make him doubt himself. Issei's emotions bubbled to the surface as he lamented the betrayal he had faced. Koneko stepped even closer, gently resting her hand on his arm, assuring him that not everyone had betrayed him. She and Sona were still there for him. Issei looked down at her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch grounding him amidst the storm of emotions. He admitted his struggle to trust anyone right now, but Koneko reassured him that he didn't have to trust them immediately. They were there for him and wouldn't leave. For the first time since the betrayal, Issei felt a flicker of hope, enough to keep him standing and moving forward. As they stood together, Issei suddenly slumped to the ground, unconscious. Koneko's voice cracked with fear as she rushed to his side, gently shaking him, but he didn't stir. His breathing was shallow and his face was pale. Sona placed a hand on Koneko's shoulder, urging her to calm down as they needed to figure this out. She turned to the faint glow of Draig emanating from the boosted gear on Issei's arm, asking what was happening. Draig's voice boomed with frustration as he expressed his inability to reach Issei, explaining that something was wrong. It felt as if Issei was trapped deep within his own mind, and Draig didn't know why. Koneko's grip tightened on Issei's hand, her heart racing as she demanded to know how Draig could not reach him, given their usual connection. Draig sighed heavily, acknowledging the truth of their bond but revealing the gravity of the situation. There was an unfamiliar force surrounding Issei, one that even he could not recognize. He felt an unsettling sensation, unsure of what was happening to him. Inside Issei's mind, darkness enveloped him. There was no light or warmth, only a chilling sense of dread. The air was thick with unsettling sounds, whispers, growls, and distant roars as if creatures were lurking just out of sight. He wondered where he was, his voice echoing in the void without receiving a response. It felt as though he was trapped in a nightmare, with shadows swirling around him, shifting as if they had a life of their own. Suddenly, the darkness began to take form, and from it emerged a figure, a towering dragon with the appearance of a vampire. Her wings were sleek and bat-like, and her eyes glowed with a deep crimson hue. Her scales shimmered in shades of black and red, radiating an aura that was both terrifying and captivating. She addressed him, revealing herself as Velgrana, the dragon-vampire hybrid who had been waiting for him. Issei stared at her in shock, questioning her identity. Velgrana lowered her head, displaying fangs that gleamed ominously but lacked malice in her gaze. She explained that she had been observing him, waiting for the moment he would be ready to unlock the deeper power within himself. Bound by the boosted gear and Draig's influence, Issei had yet to realize the extent of his potential. Issei's voice trembled as he sought clarification. Velgrana circled him slowly, her tail swishing behind her, and elaborated on her presence. She had been dormant, waiting for the right moment to emerge. With the betrayal he had suffered, he was finally prepared to learn the truth about himself and the power he possessed. As Issei clenched his fists, he struggled to comprehend her words. Velgrana reassured him that Draig was not the only entity within him. The boosted gear was a vessel for more than one power, and she had been waiting for the right conditions to reveal herself. Issei, still grappling with the revelation, questioned why this was happening now. Velgrana bluntly stated that his current state of despair had shattered his spirit, allowing true power to emerge. He was no longer bound by previous limitations and was free to harness her strength, the strength of the Void Fang Dragon. Issei's eyes widened at the mention of the Void Fang Dragon, realizing it was the name of her sacred gear. Velgrana confirmed this, explaining that it was a unique power, a fusion of vampiric and draconic energy capable of draining life force and magic from enemies. It was the power of the abyss, and now it belonged to him. He felt the weight of her words settle heavily upon him, questioning what would happen to Drake. Velgrana assured him that Drake would remain, and they would work together, though her power was different. While Drake's strength lay in boosting his potential, hers was in destruction and consuming the strength of enemies. As Issei looked down at his hands, he felt a strange energy pulsing within him, cold yet invigorating, like a surge of adrenaline mixed with fear. He repeated her words, still trying to grasp the reality of being her host. Velgrana's smirk widened as she affirmed this, instructing him to rest. When he awakened, everything would be different. Issei stirred awake with a sharp gasp, his heart racing as he sat up. The first thing he noticed was the weight on his left arm, the familiar glow of the boosted gear, but now it felt transformed. Koneko and Sona were by his side, relief washing over their faces as they saw him move. Koneko expressed her concern, her eyes widening in surprise at the change in the sacred gear. Sona stepped closer, her curiosity piqued as she observed the transformation. Issei looked down at his arm, breath catching in his throat. The boosted gear had changed. The red armor was now darker, almost black, adorned with intricate green and red markings glowing ominously. A large, glowing red orb pulsed at its center, radiating an eerie energy. Drake's voice echoed in his mind, sounding surprised. This transformation was not his doing, it was something far older. Velgrana's voice softly reminded him that things would never be the same. Issei stood still, staring at the new form of his sacred gear. The weight of Velgrana's revelations lingered in his mind, the Void Fang Dragon, a power unlike anything he had ever imagined. Koneko and Sona exchanged concerned glances, and Sona cautiously stepped forward, keeping her eyes on the transformed boosted gear. She inquired about what had happened to him, realizing that this power was no longer solely Drake's. Issei closed his eyes for a moment, hearing Velgrana's voice urging him to tell them the truth. He sighed and opened his eyes, confirming that it was not just Drake anymore. Another dragon resided within him, Velgrana. Koneko's eyes widened in disbelief, questioning how this was even possible. She leaned closer, examining the new markings on his gear, sensing the dark energy surrounding him. Issei explained that Velgrana was a hybrid, a dragon and a vampire who had been dormant inside the boosted gear, waiting for the right moment to reveal herself. He was now her host. Sona crossed her arms, deep in thought, acknowledging the rarity of a dragon-vampire hybrid and the significance of her choosing him. Issei admitted he hadn't had much of a choice, revealing that she had been waiting for him to reach a low point after the betrayal he had experienced. The memory of catching the girls with strangers still weighed heavily on his mind, and Koneko felt the guilt of the situation pressing down on her. She wanted to reach out to him, to express her deep regret for pushing him away, but she knew it wasn't the right moment. Drake's voice echoed from the gear, sounding weaker than usual. He acknowledged the strong presence of Velgrana, something he had never encountered before. Sona raised an eyebrow, focusing intently on the boosted gear. She wondered if Velgrana could communicate with them and expressed her desire to ask her some questions. Velgrana's smooth and confident voice filled the air, indicating that she could speak when she chose to, but for now, she preferred to remain hidden. There were things Issei needed to understand first before she revealed herself fully. Sona's eyes flickered with suspicion, yet she nodded, deciding they would have to trust Issei's judgment. Koneko, unable to contain herself any longer, stepped forward, her voice soft but trembling. She apologized to Issei for everything, admitting she should have told him the truth sooner but had been afraid of losing him. Now, she felt as though she had already lost him. Issei looked at her, his heart aching as he saw the pain and regret in her eyes. However, the betrayal from others had hardened a part of him. He struggled to find the right words. Koneko looked down, her ears flattening against her head, acknowledging that she didn't deserve anything from him after how she had treated him. She wanted him to know that she cared about him, always had. Before Issei could respond, a sudden surge of energy pulsed through the air. The dark aura from his boosted gear intensified, and his vision blurred. Sona called out to him, her voice distant as the world around him shifted once again. In the depths of Issei's mind, he found himself back in the dark void where Velgrana had first appeared. This time, the atmosphere felt even more oppressive, shadows swirling violently around him. Velgrana's voice echoed through the darkness as her figure emerged, her crimson eyes gleaming with amusement. Issei clenched his fists, feeling raw power coursing through him. He demanded to know what was happening and why everything was changing so rapidly. Velgrana explained that he was undergoing a transformation, adjusting to the presence of two dragons, Draig's power and hers. It would take time for his body to fully adapt. Issei narrowed his eyes, frustrated at the thought of being powerless in this situation. Velgrana smirked, assuring him that control would come with time. For now, he needed to embrace the power he had been given, as it would make him stronger than he ever imagined. Determined, Issei expressed that he didn't ask for this power or to be her host. Velgrana softened slightly, acknowledging that fate had chosen him for greatness, even if he hadn't realized it. He exhaled, the weight of her words settling in his chest, and asked how he could use this power. Velgrana explained that he needed to balance Draig's power with hers to unlock the full potential of the Void Fang dragon. However, this power came at a cost. He would need to control the vampiric side of her, the part that craved life force. Issei's heart raced at the implication, but he resolved to do whatever it took to control this power and not let it consume him. Velgrana smirked, indicating that their training would begin now. Back in the real world, Issei's eyes snapped open, a new fire burning within them. He stood slowly, feeling lighter yet more powerful than ever. The darkness of Velgrana's power lingered around him, but he felt in control. Sona and Koneko stared at him, sensing the change in his energy. Sona cautiously asked if he was okay. Issei nodded, his voice steady as he affirmed that he was better than fine. He looked at his boosted gear, now pulsing with both Draig's familiar power and Velgrana's dark energy. He declared his intention to use this power for something good. Koneko's heart swelled with hope as she saw the fire return to Issei's eyes, believing that perhaps things could still be salvaged. Yet, deep inside, Velgrana's voice whispered to Issei, reminding him that power always comes with a price. The atmosphere around the group felt heavy with unspoken words. Koneko and Sona exchanged worried glances as Issei stood, composed yet radiating a darker aura. Velgrana's power settled within him, her voice like a shadow in his mind, reminding him that he was adapting quickly but still had much to learn. The power he held would continue to grow, along with the dangers it brought. Issei's gaze flicked to Koneko, who had been quietly observing him, her ears still pinned back. He began to address her about what she had said earlier, but his voice trailed off, uncertain how to proceed. Koneko stepped forward, hesitantly closing the gap between them. She admitted that she didn't deserve his forgiveness but wanted to help him. She promised to stand by his side, determined to support him despite her past actions. Issei softened at her words, recalling the moments they had shared before everything became complicated. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, and assured her that they would figure it out. However, he needed to focus on understanding Velgrana's power first. Sona, who had been watching silently, stepped forward with a resolute expression. She reminded Issei that he wasn't alone in this. He was part of the underworld's most important factions, and the Citri clan would support him. Issei glanced at her, surprised by her firmness, and thanked her. Yet he felt the need to deal with this on his own first, not wanting to drag anyone else into the mess, especially after the betrayal he had experienced. Sona placed a hand on his shoulder, encouraging him not to shut people out. They were stronger together, and whatever happened next, they would support him and not let him fall. For a moment, Issei allowed himself to take comfort in her words. It had been a long time since he felt he could trust anyone. But even with her reassurance, a storm brewed inside him, one that only Velgrana could help him navigate. Suddenly, Draig's voice boomed from within the boosted gear, warning him that something was approaching. Issei's eyes widened as the air around them crackled with a sinister energy. He could feel it, a dark, malevolent force drawing near. Koneko sensed the same power, her ears twitching as she asked what it was. Sona adjusted her glasses, her expression darkening as she declared that whatever it wasn't friendly, and they needed to be ready. A shadowed figure emerged from the treeline, its shape cloaked in darkness, the energy it emitted wrapping around the group like a vice. Issei clenched his fists, the boosted gear glowing fiercely. He instructed his friends to stay behind him, his voice cold as his protective instincts kicked in. Even though he struggled to trust anyone, he would not allow anyone else to get hurt. The figure stepped forward, revealing a humanoid form draped in dark, tattered robes. Its eyes glowed a sickly green, and a twisted smile spread across its face as it locked eyes with Issei. The figure hissed that Issei was the one, the host of both the Red Dragon Emperor and the Void Fang Dragon, and that it had been waiting for this moment. Issei narrowed his eyes and demanded to know who it was. The figure chuckled darkly, stating that names were irrelevant for creatures like Issei and that it had come to see if the rumors were true if he truly possessed the power to destroy. Velgrana's voice echoed in Issei's mind, warning him that the figure was dangerous and that its energy was similar to hers. Issei's heart raced as he asked what the figure wanted from him. The figure grinned, revealing sharp, jagged teeth, and stated that it wanted to see him break. Without warning, the figure lunged forward with incredible speed. Issei barely had time to react, summoning the boosted gear's power to block the strike. Draig's voice boomed as the energy surged through Issei, amplifying his strength. The clash sent shockwaves through the air, forcing Sona and Koneko to take cover behind a nearby tree. Issei gritted his teeth, feeling the strain as he pushed back against the figure's overwhelming strength. But something felt off. The more he fought, the stronger the figure seemed to grow. Velgrana's voice whispered urgently, warning him that he was losing control and needed to tap into her power to survive. Issei hesitated for a moment, the darkness inside him swirling. He didn't want to rely on Velgrana's power after everything that had happened, but he knew the alternative was worse. He muttered for Velgrana to lend him her strength. As soon as the words left his mouth, a surge of dark energy erupted from the boosted gear, mixing with Draig's power. The combination was overwhelming, sending a wave of energy crashing into the figure and throwing it back several meters. The air around Issei crackled with terrifying intensity as the new form of the boosted gear Velgrana's Void Fang glowed menacingly on his arm. The figure staggered to its feet, its twisted grin widening as it acknowledged the power Issei had gained. Issei clenched his fists, feeling the raw power coursing through him. He was stronger than before, but this power came with a price. His vision flickered for a moment, the darkness inside him growing stronger. He growled for the figure to leave, his voice low and threatening. The figure's smile faded slightly, but it still radiated arrogance as it warned that this wasn't over and that the next time they met, Issei wouldn't be so lucky. With that, the figure dissolved into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as it had arrived. Issei exhaled sharply, the tension leaving his body, but the feeling of dread remained. Sona and Koneko rushed to his side, concern etched on their faces. Sona asked if he was okay, scanning him for injuries. Issei nodded, though his body felt heavier than before, and he reassured them that he was fine. But in the back of his mind, Velgrana's voice lingered, warning him that this was only the beginning and that there were forces out there that would come for him. As the shadowed figure vanished into the night, Issei stood there, catching his breath. The weight of Velgrana's new power pulsed through him, leaving him feeling both exhilarated and uneasy. He knew this was just the beginning. An enemy like that wouldn't show up for no reason. Something was coming. Sona approached cautiously, her eyes scanning his new form. She expressed concern that the power he had gained was unstable and that they couldn't afford to let it take control. Issei quietly acknowledged her words, clenching and unclenching his fist as the boosted gear returned to its dormant state. He felt he had no choice. If he didn't use this power, he would be dead. Koneko stepped forward, her small hand resting on Issei's arm as she expressed her belief in him and that he could control it. For a brief moment, Issei looked down at Koneko, her earnest expression stirring something within him, an old feeling of trust that he thought had been shattered by betrayal. Could he really rely on her again? Before Issei could respond, Velgrana's voice echoed in his mind, warning him that he had only scratched the surface of what she could offer and to tread carefully, as the line between power and madness was thin. Issei nodded internally, acknowledging the dark dragon's warning. He wasn't naive, he knew the risk of using Velgrana's strength. But right now, it was the only way forward. Sona suggested they head back to Kuo Academy to regroup and figure out who the attacker was, stating that there was more going on than just random battles. Issei agreed, though part of him wanted to stay isolated. He still wasn't sure if he could fully trust Sona, Koneko, or anyone. The betrayal by the women he once cared for gnawed at him, a deep wound that hadn't healed. He muttered that they would do this his way, with no more secrets. Sona hesitated but then nodded in agreement. The walk back to Kuo Academy was silent, tension thick between them. Koneko stuck close to Issei, her presence small but comforting. As they neared the academy gates, Issei's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw an unexpected message from Rias, one of the women who had betrayed him. His heart clenched, but he forced himself to read it. The message requested a meeting, stating that Rias knew she had hurt him but that there was more to discuss. Issei stared at the message, his thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. The audacity of her to reach out after everything that had happened was infuriating. Sona noticed his dark expression and asked what was wrong. Issei coldly replied that it was Rias, who wanted to talk as if nothing had happened. Koneko glanced at Issei with a mixture of concern and guilt, asking if he was going to meet her. Issei scoffed, declaring that he was done with them. They had already shown him what he meant to them. Velgrana's voice resonated in his mind, approving of his decision. She reminded him to focus on the path ahead, not the ghosts of the past. Issei took a deep breath, his resolve solidifying. He decided to move on. Rias and the others could handle their own issues. He had bigger concerns now. Sona's gaze softened, and she gave him a small, understanding nod. She expressed that he deserved better and assured him that the Citri clan would always be there if he needed help dealing with them. Issei appreciated her words but remained silent, his thoughts already consumed by the lingering dark energy of the attacker. Whoever or whatever that figure was, it was clear that it wasn't over. More challenges were on the horizon. As they entered the academy grounds, Draig's voice suddenly echoed in Issei's head, this time directed at Velgrana. He questioned her intentions, sensing that she was hiding something. Velgrana chuckled softly in Issei's mind, acknowledging the truth in Draig's words while hinting at the nature of power and the secrets it held until the right moment. Draig warned her not to play games, emphasizing that Issei had already faced enough. He made it clear that if she intended to use Issei for her own purposes, he would not hesitate to confront her. Velgrana reassured Draig that she bore no ill will toward Issei but hinted at forces beyond their understanding that would require Issei's reliance on her. Issei listened quietly, feeling a sense of unease. Draig's concerns were valid, Velgrana's true intentions remained unclear. For now, he had no choice but to place his trust in her. Later that night, Issei sat alone in his room, staring at the boosted gear on his arm. The red glow had dimmed, but the weight of Velgrana's presence was ever present. She urged him to let go of the past and focus on what he could control, reminding him of the extraordinary power he now possessed. Exhaustion from the day's events washed over him, and he closed his eyes, acknowledging that there was no returning to the way things were. Yet, a lingering question remained. What would he become if he fully embraced this new power? Before sleep could take him, Draig's voice echoed a warning, reminding him that such power comes at a cost. Issei didn't respond, but deep down he understood the truth in those words. The next morning arrived too quickly, and Issei awoke with a sense of unease hanging over him like a dark cloud. The previous night's battle, Velgrana's cryptic words, and Rias's message weighed heavily on his mind. He stared at the ceiling for a moment before sitting up and rubbing his temples. Velgrana's voice echoed again, urging him not to avoid his past, as running from it would only weaken his future. Issei grimaced, finding it easy for her to say, as she had not been betrayed by those he once trusted. She reminded him that trust is fragile, but power is eternal, and recognizing that would make him stronger. Issei sighed, unable to argue with her logic, though it didn't make it any easier to accept. He stood, dressed, and glanced at the boosted gear on his arm. The red and green glow flickered softly, a reminder of the power he wielded and the burden it carried. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Sona's calm voice called out, asking if he was awake. He opened the door to find her with a serious expression. She indicated that they needed to talk and shared that she had been investigating the figure they encountered the previous night, believing she might know its identity. Curiosity piqued, Issei stepped aside to let her in and asked what she knew. Sona adjusted her glasses, her sharp gaze focused as she explained that the figure was likely a servant of a rogue faction within the Cow's Brigade. While she couldn't confirm the details yet, their energy matched that of a group they had been monitoring for some time. She warned Issei that if they were targeting him, it meant they were aware of Velgrana. Issei crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. He expressed his frustration at being hunted, stating that he was done letting people come after him. If they wanted a fight, he would give them one. Velgrana's voice chuckled in his mind, pleased with his determination. Sona smiled faintly, though concern lingered in her eyes. She reminded Issei that this was not just about raw power. Strategy would be crucial in outmaneuvering their enemies. Issei nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. The message from Rias still gnawed at him, and he wondered what she had to say and why she would reach out after everything that had happened. Velgrana's voice slipped into his mind, urging him to forget Rias, as she was part of his past, not his future. Issei clenched his fist, feeling conflicted. While he understood Velgrana's reasoning, something about the message felt different. What if there was more to the betrayal than he realized? Sona noticed the shift in his expression and inquired about his thoughts. Issei hesitated before showing her the message from Rias. He expressed his uncertainty about whether he should respond. Sona read the message with narrowed eyes, acknowledging Rias's stubbornness but warning that it could be dangerous. If Rias was still involved with the others, they could be setting him up. Issei shook his head, insisting that he didn't believe that was the case. He felt that this didn't feel like a trap, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Rias was hiding something. Sona cautioned him that it was risky, and if he chose to meet her, he needed to be prepared for anything. Issei sighed, knowing the truth in her words. However, he felt compelled to seek answers. Sona's expression softened as she agreed to accompany him, stating that they couldn't take any chances if Rias and the others were involved. Issei stared at her for a moment before nodding in agreement. Let's get this over with. Later that day, Issei and Sona made their way to the Occult Research Club room. The hallways of Kuo Academy felt strangely quiet, the usual chatter of students replaced by an uneasy silence. As they approached the clubroom, Issei's heart pounded in his chest. Velgrana whispered in his mind, reminding him that no matter what Rias said, his future lay with her. Taking a deep breath, Issei pushed open the door. Inside, Rias sat alone, her hands folded on the table. The room was dimly lit, casting long shadows across the floor. She looked up as Issei and Sona entered, her expression unreadable. Rias thanked Issei for coming, her voice soft. Issei stood by the door, arms crossed, his gaze cold. He questioned Rias about her intentions. Rias sighed, her eyes filled with regret, and explained that she needed him to hear her out, insisting there was more to the situation than he realized. Issei narrowed his eyes, skeptical of her claims. He reminded her of the betrayal and expressed his disbelief that he would listen to excuses. Rias quickly defended herself, stating that they hadn't wanted to hurt him and had been manipulated. She revealed that there was someone else pulling the strings, someone more dangerous than they had anticipated. They thought they could keep him safe by maintaining distance, but they had been wrong. Issei's mind raced with the possibility that there was more to the story. Velgrana's voice hissed in his mind, warning him that Rias was trying to deceive him. Issei clenched his fists, feeling the tension build inside him as he demanded to know who was behind everything. Rias hesitated before revealing that it was Aazazelle, who was working with the Cow's Brigade. The name Aazazelle hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and dark. Issei's mind reeled at the revelation, struggling to comprehend that the man who had guided and trained him could be working against him. Rias nodded solemnly, acknowledging the difficulty of believing her words. She explained that Aazazelle had been manipulating events from the shadows, and they had been reluctant to accept the truth despite the evidence. Sona listened intently, her expression unreadable, but her fingers tightened around the hem of her skirt as she questioned Rias's decision to distance themselves from Issei, pointing out that it had left him vulnerable. Rias flinched, admitting that they had thought they were protecting him. They believed Aazazelle wanted his power and thought that pushing him away would keep him safe. Issei's fists tightened, his knuckles white as he expressed his disbelief that breaking his heart was a form of protection. Velgrana's voice echoed in his mind, insisting that they were lying and that Aazazelle couldn't control her. Issei felt a surge of anger as conflicting thoughts raced through his mind. He wanted to believe Rias, but Velgrana's words gnawed at him, making him question everything. He demanded to know why he should trust anything Rias said, given the betrayal he had experienced. Rias desperately shook her head, pleading for him to believe her. She insisted that they had only wanted to protect him. Issei stared at her, the anger and hurt warring within him. Memories of betrayal flooded back, but before he could respond, Sona stepped forward, emphasizing the need to address the current threat posed by the Cow's Brigade. Issei gritted his teeth, acknowledging that Sona was right. The present was teetering on the edge of chaos, and they needed to focus. Velgrana's voice cut through his thoughts, suggesting that they were being distracted from the real threat outside. Shaking his head to clear his mind, Issei asked what they should do now if Aazazelle was indeed involved. Rias straightened, grateful for his willingness to engage. She explained that they needed to uncover Azazelle's plans and that they had been gathering intelligence on the Cow's Brigade's movements, but they required his help. Issei questioned why he was the key, and Rias explained that Velgrana's power was unlike anything they had encountered before, making her crucial to their efforts. Velgrana's laughter echoed in his mind, declaring that she was not just a dragon but the ultimate weapon. Issei scowled, asserting that he would not be a pawn in their conflict and that any involvement would be on his terms. Rias nodded, her eyes filled with determination, acknowledging the weight of the situation. She emphasized that they needed him, that the world needed him. The weight of her words settled on Issei's shoulders, and he felt the burden of his newfound power more than ever. He was no longer just a boy trying to live his life. He had a role to play in a much larger battle. He was something dangerous. Velgrana whispered in his mind, urging him to embrace his power. She suggested that others would eventually bend to his will. However, Issei dismissed her words. He had no desire to dominate anyone. He simply wanted to make sense of the chaos that had overtaken his life. Turning to Sona, he sought her opinion. She studied him carefully, her gaze unwavering. She expressed the need to proceed with caution, emphasizing that trust was a luxury they could not afford, even with Rias. Yet, if there was a chance to stop Aazazelle and the Cow's Brigade, they had to take it. Issei sighed, running a hand through his hair. He agreed to help but warned that if he discovered any deceit from Rias again, there would be consequences. Rias nodded, her expression serious, assuring him that she would not lie to him anymore. As the sun set, they made plans to confront Aazazelle. Issei's thoughts drifted back to the figure that had attacked him the previous night, identified by Velgrana as part of the Cow's Brigade. He pondered Aazazelle's motives and why Velgrana had chosen him as her host. She teased that he would learn in time, hinting at a destiny greater than he could imagine. Issei felt the weight of those words, aware that his fate was pulling him deeper into a world filled with danger and deception. He just hoped he could survive it. The night was thick with tension, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The air felt colder than usual, and Issei sensed the weight of every step as they approached Aazazelle's stronghold. The mansion loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, casting long shadows under the moonlight. Sona and Koneko walked beside him, their faces set with determination, while Rias and her group followed closely behind, each one on edge. Koneko quietly expressed her concern, asking if he was sure about this plan. Issei nodded, though his heart felt heavy. They needed answers, and this was the only way. Velgrana warned him internally that he was walking into a trap, reminding him that Aazazelle would be expecting them. Issei acknowledged her warning but insisted he could not run from this confrontation. As they neared the entrance to the mansion, a sense of dread settled over the group. The eerie silence was broken only by the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. Issei tightened his grip on his sacred gear, scanning the area for any signs of danger. Suddenly, the heavy doors of the mansion creaked open, revealing a tall figure standing in the dim light. Aazazelle greeted Issei casually, as if they were meeting for a friendly chat rather than an inevitable confrontation. He stepped forward, his wings folded behind him, his expression unreadable. Issei felt a surge of anger but kept his emotions in check, demanding to know why Aazazelle had betrayed him. Aazazelle raised an eyebrow, smirking as he explained that everything he had done was for the greater good. He insisted that sacrifices were sometimes necessary. Issei's anger boiled over as he accused Aazazelle of manipulating him and his friends. Aazazelle remained unfazed, claiming that Issei was thinking too small and that this was about power and balance. Rhea stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury, accusing Aazazelle of using them all. He shrugged, dismissing her concerns and stating that trust was a dangerous thing in war. Velgrana's presence surged within Issei, urging him to confront Aazazelle for what he had done. Issei clenched his fists, vowing that Aazazelle would not get away with this. Azazelle's expression shifted, his smirk fading as he declared that everything he had done was to secure the future for all of them. Koneko stepped forward, her eyes burning with anger as she accused him of being just like the Cow's Brigade, caring only for himself. Aazazelle sighed, growing tired of the conversation, and proclaimed that it was time to see if they could survive the storm that was coming. In an instant, the air around them exploded with energy, and figures clad in dark armor emerged from the shadows. The Cow's Brigade, their eyes gleaming with malice. Sona called out that they were surrounded, summoning a barrier around them. Issei's heart raced as he summoned the boosted gear, calling upon Drake and Velgrana to join the fight. The Cow's Brigade charged, and chaos erupted on the battlefield. Issei fought with purpose, his fist glowing with power as he struck down the first wave of enemies. Rias and her group fought alongside him, their magic illuminating the chaos. Sona coordinated their defense, while Koneko tore through the enemy lines with deadly precision. Despite their efforts, Issei sensed something was amiss, a nagging feeling that this was all a distraction. Velgrana warned him that Aazazelle was not just standing by, he was waiting. Issei's eyes narrowed as he glanced at Aazazelle, who observed the battle with a calm, almost bored expression. Then it struck him a realization that felt like a cold dagger in his chest. Aazazelle was not merely watching, he was preparing for something. Velgrana's voice echoed urgently in his mind, warning him that it was a trap. But it was too late. With a flick of his wrist, Aazazelle unleashed a massive surge of energy that engulfed the battlefield. The force of the blast knocked everyone off their feet, and Issei felt the ground vanish beneath him as he was propelled into the air. Sona's voice echoed in his ears as the world spun around him. Then everything went dark. When Issei regained consciousness, he found himself in a strange, dimly lit room. The walls were adorned with ancient symbols, and a heavy, oppressive energy filled the air. Drake's voice sounded groggy in his mind, questioning their location. Velgrana growled, her tone dark and ominous, revealing that they were trapped in a prison set by Aazazelle. Issei's heart sank as he realized the gravity of the situation. He had been outmaneuvered again. Aazazelle had lured them into a trap, and now they were at his mercy. But Issei wasn't about to give up. He clenched his fists, his resolve hardening, determined to find a way out. Drake expressed pride in his partner's spirit, while Velgrana warned him that this was far from over. Issei nodded, determination burning in his eyes. Whatever Aazazelle had planned, he would face it head-on. He had the power of dragons at his side, and he wasn't afraid to use it. The silence of the strange prison cell was deafening. Issei sat on the cold, stone floor, his back against the wall as he gathered his thoughts. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of symbols etched into the walls, their origins unknown yet menacing. Drake and Velgrana remained silent, waiting for him to make his next move. He muttered to himself that they needed to find a way out, the feeling of betrayal still weighing heavily on him. Aazazelle had trapped them like pawns in his grand scheme. Velgrana's voice rang through his mind, filled with equal parts frustration and encouragement, reminding him that the prison wasn't enough to hold them. Aazazelle had underestimated them. Draig reassured him, reminding him of his strength as a dragon and that dragons don't stay caged. Issei pushed himself up, determination igniting within him, affirming that they would break out of there, no matter what it took. As he stood, the energy in the room shifted. The oppressive air grew even more suffocating, and the ancient symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Suddenly, the darkness rippled, and a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, tall and regal, her presence commanding. Her skin was pale as the moon, and her deep crimson eyes glowed with power. Long, flowing black hair cascaded down her back, and large, bat-like wings spread from her shoulders. Issei instinctively raised his guard, taking a step back. He demanded to know who she was, though his voice wavered slightly, as her presence felt oddly familiar. The woman smiled, her fangs glinting in the dim light, introducing herself as Ilvana, the hybrid of dragon and vampire, his new partner. Issei's eyes widened in shock, confused about what this meant for Draig. Draig reassured him but noted the unusual nature of this new force. Velgrana hissed, expressing disdain for Ilvana's vampire blood mixed with dragon essence, deeming it dangerous. Ilvana stepped closer, her eyes locked onto Issei's, revealing that she had been waiting for him, watching from the shadows until he was ready. Issei furrowed his brow, asking what she meant by being ready. Ilvana explained that he was to wield her power, stating that the world he was about to face required more than just the power of a dragon, it required something darker. A shiver ran down Issei's spine as he processed her words. Ilvana insisted that the enemies he would face could not be vanquished by raw power alone. They would require cunning, strength, and a willingness to embrace the shadows within himself. As Issei contemplated her offer, Ilvana emphasized that he was no ordinary dragon emperor. He had been broken and rebuilt, enduring betrayal, loss, and pain, yet he still rose. She stepped closer, brushing her hand against his chest, claiming that he stood on the brink of true power, which she would help him unleash. Draig warned Issei to be cautious, noting that while Ilvana was powerful, she was not like him. Velgrana expressed distrust but acknowledged that Issei would need every weapon available against his enemies. Issei looked into Ilvana's eyes, feeling the weight of her words. The temptation to gain more power to protect his friends and seek revenge was overwhelming, but something about her offer felt wrong. He narrowed his eyes, asking what the catch was, aware that power like this likely came with a price. Ilvana chuckled softly, revealing that the price was one he was already prepared to pay. To wield her power, he must embrace the darkness within himself, the part that craved vengeance and hungered for control. Issei felt a conflict rising within him. He had always prided himself on protecting those he cared about, but could he truly embrace the darker side of himself? Ilvana's gaze softened, and for the first time, her voice carried sincerity, urging him to unleash that side and embrace his true potential. For a moment, Issei hesitated. The power she offered was undeniable, and the thought of never feeling helpless again was enticing. But was it worth losing himself in the process? Draig's voice interrupted his thoughts, assuring him that whatever decision he made, they would stand by him. But remember, this power for power's sake can lead you down a path you might never return from. Velgrana added that Issei was in danger, but so were the enemies ahead. It was his choice to make. Issei closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, but in that moment he made his choice. He resolved to take the power offered to him, vowing not to let it control him. Ilvana's smile widened, her eyes glowing brighter as she acknowledged his determination. In a flash of crimson light, the strange gear from the picture appeared on Issei's arm, merging with his boosted gear. The new power surged through him, dark and intoxicating, yet under his control. He could feel Ilvana's presence within him, as strong as Draig's and Velgrana's. Ilvana whispered in his mind, urging him to show Aazazelle what happens when one betrays a dragon. Issei opened his eyes, a new fire burning within them. The room around him began to crumble as his newfound power surged. It was time to escape and confront Aazazelle, to unleash the dragon's rebirth. As the walls of the prison crumbled around him, Issei stood amidst the dust and debris, his eyes glowing with a newfound power. The strange gear on his arm pulsed with crimson and emerald energy, a fusion of the boosted gear and Ilvana's presence. The room shattered like glass, but Issei felt no fear, only determination. Drake spoke with a sense of both pride and caution, acknowledging Issei's choice and expressing curiosity about where this new power would lead them. Velgrana warned that they were in uncharted territory, but one thing was certain: they would not go unnoticed. Issei clenched his fist, feeling the energy coursing through his veins. He declared that there would be no more hiding or hesitation. With a swift motion, he broke through the remaining barrier, sending chunks of stone and magic spiraling into the void. The oppressive energy of the prison dispersed as he stepped outside the crumbled cell. The world beyond was vast, an endless labyrinth of shadows and floating structures, Aazazelle's twisted creation. But Issei's mind was clear, focused solely on confronting Aazazelle. As he moved, a familiar voice called out from behind. Koneko rushed toward him, her cat ears twitching as she assessed the destruction around him. She expressed her concern about the massive surge of power they had felt. Sona wasn't far behind, her eyes narrowed in thought as she noted the difference in Issei's aura. Issei turned to face them, seeing the worry in their eyes. Koneko's usual stoicism was replaced with genuine fear, while Sona's strategic mind raced to make sense of what had just happened. He explained that he had done what he had to do, vowing not to let Aazazelle or anyone else keep them caged any longer. He was done being someone's pawn. Koneko stepped closer, searching his face for answers. Issei hesitated, glancing at the new gear on his arm, and admitted that he had made a dangerous deal, but one that would help them escape. He reassured her that he was still himself. Koneko, clearly torn between trust and caution, expressed her concern about what would happen next. Sona assessed Issei's new power, warning him that such power always comes with a price. Issei acknowledged this, stating he would pay it if it meant protecting the people he cared about. Before they could continue, the air shifted, and a cold wind blew through the ruined structures, carrying with it a familiar, malevolent presence. Aazazelle appeared before them, his wings folded behind his back, amusement evident on his face. He acknowledged Issei's transformation, noting that he had become quite the spectacle. Issei felt his blood boil at the sight of Aazazelle, the smirk on his face fueling his anger and the betrayal twisting in his chest. He confronted Aazazelle, expressing his disdain for being used. Aazazelle, unfazed, claimed that everything had been part of his plan, and now Issei was exactly where he wanted him. Koneko moved to Issei's side, warning him that Aazazelle was lying, while Sona stepped forward, her hand glowing with magical energy, reminding them that Aazazelle was a manipulator. But Issei's focus remained solely on Aazazelle, his heart pounding as the energy from his new gear surged, intertwining with Drake's power and Velgrana's resolve. Drake cautioned Issei not to lose his cool, while Velgrana snarled that Aazazelle had underestimated him. Ilvana's voice purred softly in his mind, encouraging him to show Aazazelle what true power looked like. Issei took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm. He declared that he did not care about Aazazelle's plans and would no longer be a puppet. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper as he vowed not to be held back by anyone anymore. In an instant, Issei's new gear flared to life, its crimson and emerald glow illuminating the darkened world around them. The sheer force of his aura caused the ground to shake, cracks forming beneath his feet as raw power surged through his body. Aazazelle raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed, and questioned whether Issei was serious about fighting him. Issei narrowed his eyes, his expression cold, and declared that he was not just going to fight Aazazelle, he was going to end this. Without warning, Issei lunged forward, his fist glowing with the combined might of his boosted gear and the new energy coursing through him. The air crackled with raw power as he aimed straight for Aazazelle's face. The fallen angel barely had time to react, dodging the blow by a hair's breadth. The force of Issei's punch collided with the air, sending shockwaves through the ground and shattering nearby structures. Aazazelle commented on Issei's newfound strength, his voice still taunting but now edged with caution. Issei gritted his teeth, launching another barrage of attacks, each punch faster and stronger than the last. His movements were fueled by a mixture of rage and desperation, but there was control now, a deadly precision that hadn't been there before. Aazazelle dodged and deflected each strike with practiced ease, but Issei could see the cracks in his confident facade. He wasn't invincible. He could be beaten. Velgrana urged him to keep pushing, her voice fierce, reminding him that he was wearing Aazazelle down. Draig added that while Aazazelle was faster, he was not stronger, encouraging Issei to focus and stay calm. Ilvana's laughter echoed in his mind, dark and sweet, urging him to crush Aazazelle and show him the true meaning of power. With one final burst of energy, Issei unleashed a devastating blow, his fist connecting with Azazelle's chest. The force of the impact sent the fallen angel crashing through several walls, his wings flailing as he struggled to regain control. For a moment, there was silence. Issei stood, breathing heavily, his body still crackling with energy. Koneko and Sona looked at him in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief. Koneko whispered, wondering if he had gotten Aazazelle. Issei didn't answer, his gaze focused on the rubble where Aazazelle had landed. He could feel it, Aazazelle wasn't done yet. From the shadows, a low chuckle echoed through the ruined landscape. Azazelle's voice rang out, amused despite the obvious pain he was in, acknowledging Issei's effort but declaring that it wasn't over yet. Emerging from the rubble, Azazelle's clothes were torn, and his face was bruised, but his eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. He wiped the blood from his lip and declared that Issei had passed the test, but the real game was just beginning. The tension hung heavy in the air, thick as smoke. Azazelle's mocking voice still echoed in the background, but Issei paid it no mind. His body buzzed with power, and his mind was clearer than it had been in a long time. Amidst the chaos, a different kind of clarity surfaced in his heart. He looked over at Sona and Koneko, who stood by his side, their expressions a mixture of concern and determination. They hadn't left him, even when things seemed hopeless. In the face of betrayal and overwhelming odds, these two had been there, unwavering. Issei felt a weight in his chest that wasn't from the battle. It was something deeper, something he had been pushing aside for too long. He took a deep breath, his eyes flicking between Sona and Koneko. For a brief moment, he almost hesitated. But he wouldn't hold back anymore. He needed to say something before they went any further. Kaneko's ears twitched as she glanced up at him, curious. Issei interrupted Sona, who had sensed the shift in his tone, declaring that it wasn't about Azazelle's next move but about them. Both Sona and Koneko blinked, caught off guard by the sudden turn in the conversation. Issei scratched the back of his head, feeling the weight of their gazes on him. This wasn't like facing down an enemy, it was far more terrifying. But he pushed forward, admitting that he had been thinking about this for a while but never had the guts to say anything. After everything that had happened, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Koneko tilted her head, her expression softening, asking what he was trying to say. Issei's eyes locked onto hers first, expressing his gratitude for her unwavering support through everything. He realized he cared about her more than he thought he could. Kaneko's cheeks flushed, and she asked if he really meant that. Issei confirmed his feelings, expressing his desire to give them a chance if she felt the same. Kaneko's surprise and emotion were evident as she admitted she had felt that way for a long time but didn't think he would reciprocate. She agreed, and Issei's heart soared at her words. He turned toward Sona, whose eyes were now focused entirely on him. He acknowledged her support, admitting that she had always pushed him to be better and that he had fallen for her too. Sona blinked, clearly taken aback, but Issei affirmed his sincerity, expressing his care for both of them and his desire to be honest about his feelings. For a moment, there was silence. Sona's expression shifted as she processed his words, and then, to Issei's surprise, she smiled a rare, genuine smile. She admired his honesty and agreed to give it a shot, but warned him not to slack off. Issei chuckled, feeling an immense weight lift from his chest. Koneko, now standing closer to him, glanced at Sona and smirked slightly, acknowledging their bond. Sona adjusted her glasses, her smile lingering, and they stood together for a moment, a sense of peace settling over them despite the chaos around them. But the moment didn't last long. Aazazelle's voice interrupted their brief respite, his laughter ringing through the ruined landscape. He mocked their moment, questioning if they really thought they had time for romance when he was right there. Issei turned back toward Aazazelle, his expression hardening, declaring that he had said what he needed to say and was ready to finish this. The fallen angel smirked, his dark wings spreading wide, inviting Issei to give it his best shot and see if his new power was enough to take him down. Koneko and Sona moved to Issei's side, their own power flaring to life, ready for the battle ahead. Koneko's fists crackled with energy, and Sona's magic formed intricate sigils around her hands. Sona expressed her determination, stating that they were not facing their opponent alone. Koneko added her support, her usual stoicism replaced with a fierce resolve. Issei nodded, feeling not just the power surging through him but also the strength of the bonds he had formed with those he cared about. Together, they would take him down. Aazazelle's smirk remained as he observed Issei, Sona, and Koneko standing united against him. The fallen angel's wings beat once, creating a gust of wind that swept across the battlefield. His dark aura flared with malevolent energy, but Issei now possessed something that made Aazazelle's confidence seem misplaced. Issei's eyes gleamed with determination as he clenched his fist, declaring that they had come too far to back down. He was done letting people like Aazazelle control him. Aazazelle taunted them, questioning whether the three of them truly believed they could stand against him. Issei's new gear pulsed with energy, a mixture of crimson, emerald, and dark shadows swirling around him. The bond he shared with Velgrana and Ilvana fortified his strength, but it was the trust he felt in Koneko and Sona that truly empowered him. He proclaimed that they were stronger together and that Aazazelle was about to find out why. Koneko stepped forward, her fists glowing with energy as she locked her eyes on Aazazelle. She asserted that he had underestimated them and that they would no longer be used as pawns. Sona's magical circles expanded around her, glowing with intricate runes and symbols, as she stated that they were not just fighting for themselves but for each other, something Aazazelle would never understand. The light reflected off her glasses, revealing the fierce glint in her eyes. Aazazelle chuckled darkly, dismissing their resolve. He launched himself into the air without warning, his wings cutting through the wind as he dove toward them at breakneck speed. Black lightning crackled in his hands as he summoned his immense power, aiming it straight at Issei. Koneko jumped in front of Issei, her small frame glowing with defensive energy, but Issei was ready. He declared that he had this, moving his fist forward. His gear reacted instantly, the crimson glow erupting as he channeled both Draig's and Velgrana's power. With a roar, Issei released a torrent of energy, clashing with Aazazelle's dark lightning in midair. The impact sent shockwaves across the battlefield, but Issei held his ground, the newfound power in his gear allowing him to push back harder than ever before. Draig's voice boomed in his mind, urging him to unleash everything, while Velgrana added her icy excitement, encouraging him to show the strength of their bond. Issei gritted his teeth, pushing even harder, declaring that this was for everything Aazazelle had done. The surge of energy finally overwhelmed Aazazelle's attack, shattering his dark lightning and sending the fallen angel spiraling backward through the air. He barely managed to right himself, hovering above them, a mixture of shock and fury on his face. Aazazelle muttered in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a mere human could achieve such power. Sona stepped up beside Issei, her magic flaring even brighter as she stated that Aazazelle had made the mistake of thinking they were just individuals. Together, they were unstoppable. Koneko leapt into the air, launching herself toward Aazazelle with a burst of speed, her fists glowing as she struck him hard, landing a solid hit to his midsection. Aazazelle grunted in pain, stumbling in midair as Koneko gracefully landed next to Issei and Sona. Aazazelle growled, his eyes glowing with rage, questioning whether they truly believed they could defeat him. Issei's gear pulsed with power once more, feeling the presence of Draig and Velgrana pushing him forward. The dark energy of Ilvana swirled within him, amplifying his strength. Velgrana whispered for him to finish this, urging him to end Aazazelle now. Issei nodded, his eyes fixed on Aazazelle, declaring that it was over and that Aazazelle had lost. He felt Sona and Koneko beside him, their energy syncing with his. Together, they were unstoppable. Issei raised his hand, the power within him reaching its peak, and proclaimed that this was for everything Aazazelle had done, for every life he had tried to manipulate and every person he had hurt. Aazazelle barely had time to react as Issei unleashed a devastating beam of energy, a fusion of Draig's fire, Velgrana's darkness, and Ilvana's cold resolve. The beam tore through the air, too fast for Aazazelle to dodge. The impact was explosive, and Aazazelle screamed as the energy enveloped him, consumed by the sheer force of Issei's attack. For a moment, everything was engulfed in light. When the light finally faded, Aazazelle was nowhere to be seen, and the battlefield fell silent. Issei lowered his hand, panting heavily as the power within him slowly receded. He glanced at Koneko and Sona, who were both breathing hard but still standing. Koneko expressed her relief, stating that it was over, while Sona nodded, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They had done it. Issei's legs felt weak, but he smiled, acknowledging their victory together. He looked at Koneko and Sona, his heart swelling with gratitude. They hadn't just fought with him, they had fought for him, standing by him when no one else had. Now, united, they had won. The battlefield lay quiet, the oppressive tension of Aazazelle's presence gone, leaving behind only the faint hum of magical energy in the air. Issei stood tall, despite the exhaustion pulling at his body, with Koneko and Sona by his side. They had achieved something that seemed impossible moments ago, and the true weight of their victory was still sinking in. Issei wiped the sweat from his brow, his breaths shallow and rapid, softly acknowledging their triumph. Koneko nodded, her expression a mixture of relief and satisfaction, while Sona adjusted her glasses, scanning the battlefield for any potential threats. She reminded them that although Aazazelle was strong, their challenges were not over. They needed to regroup and assess the situation, as there might be consequences to their actions. Issei realized she was right. The battle might be over, but the ripple effect of taking down someone as powerful as Aazazelle was bound to have serious repercussions. But for now, all he could feel was an overwhelming sense of relief. Issei looked between Koneko and Sona, determined to share what was on his mind. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves fluttering in his chest. The battle had been the easy part, this was far more difficult. He began, his voice steady despite the thudding of his heart. He had spent a lot of time thinking, and during everything that had happened, he realized he didn't want to face anything alone anymore. Koneko and Sona turned their attention to him, their eyes focused intently. Sona arched an eyebrow, her lips parting slightly, curious about what he was about to say. Koneko listened closely, her ears twitching with interest. Issei felt their attention weighing on him, but he pushed forward, determined to express what had been building inside him. He confessed that he had fallen for both of them, expressing his sincere feelings. He cared deeply for Koneko and Sona and didn't want to ignore that any longer. Sona's eyes widened in surprise, her voice soft as she processed his admission. Kaneko's cheeks flushed slightly, her tail swishing behind her as she sought confirmation. Issei nodded firmly, wanting to leave no room for doubt. He acknowledged that this might be sudden, but he couldn't stay silent any longer. They both meant so much to him, and he hoped they would consider giving their relationship a chance. For a moment, silence enveloped them. Koneko glanced at Sona, and Sona met her gaze. There was a shared understanding between them. Finally, Sona stepped forward, a small but genuine smile forming on her lips. She acknowledged Issei's boldness, recognizing it as part of who he was. If he was serious, she was willing to see where this could lead. Koneko's smile widened as she nodded in agreement, revealing her long-held feelings for him and her desire to explore what could happen next. Issei felt a weight lift off his shoulders, warmth spreading through his chest as he expressed his gratitude, promising not to let them down. Koneko stepped closer, gently touching Issei's arm, while Sona crossed her arms, her sharp gaze softening as she reminded him of his responsibilities. Issei laughed, feeling more at ease than he had in a long time. He wouldn't dream of slacking off with them around to keep him in line. As they stood together, their bond solidified. A new sense of purpose filled Issei's heart. He wasn't alone anymore, He had Koneko and Sona by his side, not just as allies, but as something much deeper. Together, they could face anything. Later, as they began to make their way back to the others, the sky above them began to clear, the oppressive clouds that had hung over the battlefield dissipating. The sun peeked through, casting a warm, golden light over the land. Koneko asked what they would do next, her amber eyes flicking toward Issei. He glanced at Sona, then back at Koneko, affirming that they would keep moving forward. There was still much to figure out, but as long as they stuck together, they could handle whatever came their way. Sona adjusted her glasses, a small smirk on her lips, ready for whatever happened next. Rias couldn't sit still. Pacing back and forth in front of the grand doors leading to Surzek's private office, she ran her fingers through her crimson hair, trying to compose herself. Her heart pounded with a mix of anxiety and anger. It wasn't supposed to turn out this way. Issei was meant to stay loyal to her, yet it seemed like he had drifted further away ever since he returned from his training. But she had a plan. If she could convince Surzek that Issei was betraying her and the others, she could turn everyone against him. She knocked once, and before she could second-guess her decision, she pushed the door open. Surzek was seated behind his large, mahogany desk, his usually gentle eyes darkening at the sight of Rias's distressed state. He asked what was wrong, noticing her upset demeanor. Rias swallowed, making her voice tremble slightly as she approached him. She had to make this believable. She told him it was about Issei, claiming she had caught him betraying her and the other girls. Her voice broke as she spoke, forcing tears to well in her eyes. Surzek frowned deeply, doubt flickering across his face. He reminded her that Issei had always been faithful and had fought for them. Rias insisted that everything had changed since he returned, claiming he had been sneaking around and seeing other women behind their backs, asserting that she had seen it with her own eyes. Surzek's expression hardened, concern for his sister taking over as the doubt faded. He acknowledged that if what she said was true, he couldn't ignore it. Rising from his desk, he radiated authority as he declared he would get to the bottom of this. He called for Grafia, who appeared silently in the room, her eyes reflecting the seriousness of the situation. He instructed her to find Issei and bring him to him immediately. Rias exhaled slowly, a hint of satisfaction crossing her face. Soon, Issei would be forced to answer for his supposed betrayal, and everything would return to the way it was supposed to be. All she had to do now was wait. Issei had been resting with Koneko and Sona, sitting near the edge of the school grounds after returning from a sparring session. However, he couldn't shake the strange feeling that had been nagging him since his return from training. Everything had changed. The relationships he once cherished now felt hollow, except for Koneko and Sona, who had stood by him when the others seemed distant. Just as he was about to voice his concerns to them, Grafia appeared in front of them, her presence sudden and unnerving. She addressed Issei with calm urgency, stating that Surzek had requested his presence and that he needed to come with her at once. Issei blinked, surprised by the unexpected summons. Grafia did not respond, simply gesturing for Issei to follow her. He exchanged a concerned glance with Sona and Koneko, who both appeared equally confused. Sona expressed her worry, urging him to be careful as they waited for him to return. With a nod, Issei followed Grafia, his mind racing with questions about Surzek and whether it had anything to do with Rias. The uneasy feeling in his chest intensified as they approached the meeting hall. Upon entering the meeting chamber, Issei felt the weight of every gaze in the room. It wasn't just Rias and Surzek. Familiar faces surrounded him, including Rias's parents, Lord and Lady Gremry. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Surzek stood at the center, his usually calm demeanor shadowed by disappointment. Rias sat beside her mother, her eyes red and swollen, suggesting she had been crying. When she noticed Issei, her expression hardened. Surzek began with a low but authoritative voice, informing Issei that Rias had brought troubling news, accusing him of being unfaithful and cheating on her and the other girls. Issei's heart raced with disbelief at the accusation. He insisted that it was a lie, claiming he would never betray them. Rias stood, fists clenched, her voice trembling as she accused him of sneaking around with other women, betraying their trust. Issei countered her claims, his anger rising as he questioned why she would say such things. Before the argument could escalate, Sona and Koneko burst into the room, having followed closely behind. Koneko rushed to Issei's side, glaring at Rias and defending Issei's loyalty. Sona stepped forward, her voice calm yet firm, pointing out that the accusation did not add up since Issei had been with them almost the entire time since returning from training. The room erupted into chaos, with Rias continuing to push her narrative while Koneko and Sona defended Issei. The tension mounted until an overwhelming presence filled the chamber. The walls trembled as an ancient, terrifying power filled the air. Suddenly, the crimson figure of Great Red appeared, his enormous form somehow fitting within the space, though he seemed far too large for the room. His golden eyes gleamed with raw power as they settled on Issei. With a voice like thunder, Great Red commanded silence, instantly halting the bickering. All eyes turned toward him, a mix of fear and awe evident on their faces. He revealed that he had been watching for a long time. Surzex, respectful yet wary, inquired about Great Red's presence. The dragon explained that he was there to give Issei something he had earned, a gift for his loyalty and strength, the dragon pieces. In a desperate attempt to cling to her lie, Rias screamed, questioning why Great Red would give a gift to someone she accused of cheating. Great Red's eyes blazed with fury as he confronted Rias, reminding her that she had allowed Issei to die. The room gasped collectively at the revelation as memories of Issei's death at the hands of Riser's minions flooded back, highlighting Rias's hesitation to save him in a critical moment. Turning to Issei, Great Red's tone softened as he asked for permission to reveal the truth. Issei nodded, affirming his consent. A red light enveloped the room, and everyone witnessed Issei's memories, his sacrifices, and his unwavering loyalty. They saw Rias's hesitation and the manipulation that followed. When the visions ended, silence fell over the room. Guilt and shame were evident on Rias's face, while her parents looked devastated. Even Surzex struggled to process what he had just witnessed. Great Red extended a massive claw, revealing a set of glowing crimson pieces before Issei. They resembled the evil pieces but radiated with draconic power, pulsating with life. He explained that these dragon pieces would allow Issei to build his own group, his own kin. Feeling the power of the pieces, Issei whispered his gratitude, awe filling his voice. Great Red nodded solemnly, urging him to use them wisely as his path was now his own. With those final words, Great Red vanished, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. The air in the meeting chamber was thick with silence, an eerie quiet hanging over the gathered families and devils. After Great Red's departure, everyone was left reeling from the revelations. Issei stood, eyes fixed on the glowing crimson pieces that hummed with ancient power, urging him to take control of his own fate. Rias could not meet his gaze, her face pale and hands trembling. The weight of her lies and manipulation, along with the truth of her past mistakes, were laid bare for all to see. Sona and Koneko stepped closer to Issei, their quiet presence offering him strength. They had believed in him, standing by his side through everything. Issei glanced at them, his heart swelling with gratitude. Finally, Surzex broke the silence, his voice heavy with emotion as he addressed Issei. He acknowledged the gravity of what he had seen and apologized for trusting Rias's words. His expression softened but was filled with disappointment as he turned to Rias, urging her to understand the consequences of her actions. Rias looked up at her brother, tears brimming in her eyes. She confessed that she never intended for things to escalate this far, believing that if she could make Issei stay, everything would return to normal. Her voice cracked as she wiped away a tear, expressing her fear of losing him. Issei spoke calmly, though sadness tinged his tone. He reminded Rias that she hadn't lost him because of someone else. She had lost him due to her inability to trust him. Rias winced at Issei's words, guilt settling deeper into her heart. The room remained tense as the other parents watched the exchange quietly, weighing the situation in their minds. Lord Gremory, who had been silent throughout most of the ordeal, finally spoke up, his deep voice breaking through the quiet. He acknowledged Issei's suffering due to misunderstandings and manipulations. As the head of the Gremory family, he offered his sincerest apologies for how his daughter's actions had affected him. Issei nodded, though his face showed no sign of malice or anger. He expressed his gratitude to Lord Gremory but stated that he needed to move forward. Lady Gremory shifted uncomfortably, looking between Issei and her daughter, asking what he meant by that. Sona stepped forward, standing beside Issei, asserting that he had been wronged and deserved a chance to build a new life on his own terms. Koneko added in her soft yet firm voice that they would not leave him alone anymore. Issei took a deep breath, his voice steady and filled with determination as he declared that he would not stay bound by the past. He had been loyal to them for so long, but now he had to choose his own path. The room remained still as Issei stepped forward, holding up the dragon pieces in front of him, feeling the immense power surging through them. Before the tension could rise further, Issei spoke with calm authority, making it clear that he had no intention of abandoning those who stood with him, but he was no longer a pawn in anyone else's game. He had his own pieces, now his own destiny to forge. Everyone's attention was fully on him as he continued, his eyes flicking to Koneko and Sona. He had already decided who would stand with him as his family and companions. He hesitated for a moment before confidently stating that the three of them were together, and they would travel the world to forge their own path. A collective gasp rippled through the room, particularly from the Gremory family. Rias looked as though she had been struck, her wide eyes filling with disbelief as she processed Issei's decision to leave with Sona and Koneko. Issei's gaze softened but remained resolute as he confirmed his choice to leave, stating that he could no longer stay tied to the past. Sona added that this was the best choice for all of them, emphasizing Issei's right to live freely and make his own decisions. Koneko nodded in agreement, her small hand slipping into Issei's as a sign of their commitment, assuring that they would always be there for him. Lord and Lady Gremory exchanged glances, unsure how to react to the sudden shift in the room. Meanwhile, Sona's parents looked at their daughter with quiet pride, understanding that she had made her choice to stand beside someone she respected and cared for. Lord Gremory finally cleared his throat and spoke with a heavy sigh, acknowledging Issei's decision. While saddened to see him leave their family, he understood that Issei must do what was best for him. He paused, looking toward his daughter, who remained silent in her seat, hoping that in time, Rias could come to terms with what had happened. Rias lowered her head, tears still clinging to her eyelashes, but she said nothing. The weight of her actions was something she would have to bear on her own. As the meeting began to wind down, Issei, Sona, and Koneko stepped outside the grand hall together, feeling the weight of the past finally lift from Issei's shoulders. He felt free for the first time in a long time, no longer bound by the expectations or manipulations of others. With Koneko and Sona by his side, they would chart a new course for their future. Issei glanced down at the dragon pieces that still rested in his hand, their crimson glow pulsing gently. He knew that this was only the beginning. His journey as a dragon had only just begun. With a small smile, he turned to his two new companions, asking where they should go first. Sona smirked, her eyes sparkling with excitement, suggesting anywhere but there. Koneko nodded with a slight smile of her own, affirming that as long as they were together, that was enough. Issei chuckled, feeling a newfound warmth in his chest, and declared that they would go make their own story. And with that, the three of them walked away from the past, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. Stepping out of the grand meeting hall into the open air, Issei felt the weight of everything he had been through slowly lift from his shoulders. The sky above was painted in a soft gradient of orange and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon. This sunset felt different. It marked a new chapter in his life, a break from the manipulations, the deceit, and the heartache. Sona stood beside him, her sharp eyes glinting with purpose as she adjusted her glasses. Koneko was on his other side, her small hand still loosely holding onto his. The silence that settled between them wasn't awkward but comfortable, as if they were all quietly acknowledging the gravity of what had just occurred. Issei glanced at the dragon pieces resting in his pocket, their weight both physical and symbolic. These pieces represented a new path, one where he was in control, where no one could use or manipulate him anymore. Great Red had given him the tools to forge his own destiny, and with Sona and Koneko by his side, he was determined to make the most of this second chance. Sona spoke first, her voice calm and measured, though a hint of excitement flickered behind her words, asking where they would go from there. Issei chuckled, looking out at the horizon, responding that they would go anywhere but back there. He said it half-jokingly, but the weight behind the words was undeniable. Koneko, ever the quiet one, nodded, her expression determined, affirming that they had each other, and that was enough. As they walked further away from the meeting hall, Issei couldn't help but feel the enormity of what lay ahead. The world was wide and full of possibilities, but it also meant leaving behind the life he had known. He had no real attachments now, nothing that anchored him to Kuo or the old life he had been so fiercely loyal to. Sona noticed his pensive expression and smiled softly, reassuring him that this was his chance to shape his own future and that they would be with him no matter what. Koneko, always more concise with her words, gave him a firm nod, promising that they would protect each other. Issei looked between the two of them, warmth swelling in his chest, feeling grateful for their support. Issei felt immense gratitude for the support of Sona and Koneko. For a long time, his loyalty to Rias and the Gremory household had been unwavering, but he now understood that loyalty must be earned. Sona and Koneko had stood by him when others had faltered, and that meant more to him than he could articulate. As the trio strolled through the quiet streets of Kuo, Issei's thoughts wandered to the dragon pieces. He could sense their subtle power against his side, like a heartbeat in sync with his own. Great Red had entrusted him with a significant responsibility and an incredible opportunity. He had the power to transform others into dragons, to create a new family on his own terms. Issei contemplated the dragon pieces, pulling one out to examine it in the fading light. He realized he needed to understand them better if he was going to HR and assess their power. Sona, ever the strategist, suggested they explore various locations to learn more about dragon lore, including the Dragon King's domain or seeking out ancient dragons who might provide insight. Issei felt a surge of excitement at the possibilities. The world was filled with dragons, and he was confident they would uncover what they sought. Koneko, with her serious amber eyes, assured him that they would always protect him. As they continued their walk, the bond among the trio deepened. Issei had always been protective of those he cared about, but Sona and Koneko were more than friends. They were partners who had chosen to stand by him when others had not. He admired Sona's confidence and intellect, her unwavering support a source of strength for him. Koneko, though quiet and reserved, possessed a fierce heart, having overcome her own struggles. Her presence reminded him that no one had to face their challenges alone. Issei smiled softly at the thought of them as family. The word resonated deeply within him, and he felt a sense of belonging that he had longed for. With Sona and Koneko by his side, he felt ready to confront any challenge. The future loomed uncertain, yet for the first time in a long while, Issei found that uncertainty invigorated him. There were countless adventures to embark upon, battles to engage in, and mysteries to unravel, all on his terms. He was no longer a pawn in someone else's game. He was his own person, empowered by the strength of dragons. As twilight enveloped the world, Issei turned to Sona and Koneko with a grin, eager to begin their journey. Sona suggested they start with the Dragon King's domain, confident that he would have the knowledge they sought. Koneko, her hand firmly grasping Issei's, agreed, and together they ventured into the night, leaving behind the shadows of their past and stepping boldly into a future filled with endless possibilities. The night had descended upon a small, ravaged town, darkness cloaking it except for the flickering glow of lingering fires from homes and shops that had once thrived. Now, it lay in ruins, a victim of the Chaos Brigade's terror. Smoke billowed into the night sky, and the air was thick with the scent of ash. Distant screams and the sinister laughter of soldiers echoed through the desolation. Sona adjusted her glasses, her gaze sharp and analytical as she surveyed the scene. The town had been completely overrun by the Chaos Brigade, and they needed to proceed with caution, as danger could lurk around any corner. Koneko, standing beside her, closed her eyes momentarily, extending her senses. Her cat-like ears twitched as she focused, sensing movement ahead and the presence of significant energy. Issei walked slightly ahead, his fists clenched as the boosted gear sparked to life with a faint glow. The familiar red gauntlet pulsed with power, resonating with his determination. The Cow's Brigade had caused too much suffering, and he was resolved to put an end to it. The weight of his past, filled with betrayal and heartache, fueled his desire to forge something new and better. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the devastated town, the flickering flames cast eerie shadows across the broken streets. Soon, they stumbled upon a troubling sight. Two young women, identical twins, were locked in combat against a squad of Cow's Brigade soldiers. Their wings, a striking mix of crimson and jet-black feathers, flared as they fought valiantly. Though powerful, they were clearly outnumbered, desperation etched on their faces as the soldiers closed in. Sona noted their hybrid nature, recognizing the dragonic energy intertwined with the essence of fallen angels. Koneko observed that they were strong but would soon be overwhelmed without assistance. Issei, empathizing with their struggle, felt the sense of urgency. He had faced similar battles alone, and he couldn't let them suffer the same fate. Without hesitation, he rallied his friends to action. Koneko was the first to spring forward, her small frame a blur as she darted into the fray. With incredible speed, she delivered a powerful punch to the nearest Cow's Brigade soldier, sending him crashing into a wall. Sona followed closely, her fingers weaving intricate spells that immobilized several soldiers. Arcane circles formed beneath their feet, and magical chains ensnared them, rendering them helpless. With authority, she declared their defeat. Issei charged in next, the boosted gear glowing brighter as he activated its power, ready to join the fight and save the twins from their dire predicament. The familiar voice of Draig echoed in Issei's mind, amplifying his strength. With a powerful swing of his fist, he struck the ground, sending shockwaves through the street. The remaining soldiers were knocked off their feet, disoriented and unable to defend themselves. The twins, though battered and bruised, looked up in shock as the tide of the battle turned in their favor. The one with silver hair, her wings tattered but still holding strong, managed to catch her breath and asked who they were, her voice shaking from both exhaustion and disbelief. Issei stepped forward, his face calm yet filled with resolve, assuring them that they were safe now. The battle ended swiftly after that. With Issei, Sona, and Koneko's intervention, the Cow's Brigade soldiers were either defeated or driven off. The town was far from saved. It would take months, if not years, to recover from the destruction, but at least the immediate threat had been neutralized. The twins, now safe from their pursuers, sat down on a broken stone bench, trying to catch their breath. Both had sustained injuries, though none were life-threatening. Their hybrid forms were rare half-dragon and half-fallen angel, a combination that was both dangerous and highly coveted by those seeking power, like the Cow's Brigade. Issei walked up to them, offering a bottle of water he had pulled from his bag, asking if they were all right, his tone gentle despite the fierce battle they had just endured. The twin with silver hair took the bottle gratefully, her crimson eyes softening slightly as she introduced herself as Althea and gestured to her sister, who had darker silver hair and an identical build, saying her name was Nyx. Nyx, still wary but clearly relieved, nodded at Issei, explaining that they had been running for days as the Cow's Brigade chased them, wanting to use them. Her voice was quiet but filled with an underlying anger. Sona, ever the tactician, crossed her arms and inquired why the Cow's Brigade was after them specifically, noting that while hybrids were rare, this level of pursuit suggested there was more to their story. Althea nodded, her eyes darkening with painful memories as she revealed that their parents were powerful, one a dragon lord and the other a fallen angel from a prestigious line. The Cow's Brigade sought to unlock their full potential, intending to use them as weapons in their twisted schemes. Issei's heart clenched as he listened. He understood all too well what it felt like to be hunted, to have others seek to control one for power. His voice softened as he assured them they didn't have to run anymore. They were safe with him. Nyx looked up at him, her eyes filled with both hope and suspicion, questioning why he would help them when he didn't even know them. Issei smiled, a warm and genuine smile that reached his eyes, explaining that he had been where they were alone, hunted, and used. But he found people who helped him, and now he wanted to help others too. As the night deepened, Issei and the others gathered around a small fire they had made. The atmosphere was calmer now, but the weight of what had happened still lingered. The twins were exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but a sense of hope had begun to flicker in their hearts. Sona broke the silence, stating that the Cows Brigade wouldn't stop coming after them. They needed more than just protection. They needed power and a way to fight back. Nyx's fists tightened at the thought, expressing their desire to stop running after spending their whole lives trying to survive. She looked at Issei, her eyes filled with determination, asking if he could help them. Issei paused for a moment, glancing at Sona and Koneko, both of whom nodded in silent agreement. His hand reached into his pocket, feeling the dragon pieces that Great Red had gifted him not long ago. The pieces pulsed with a warm energy, eager to be used. He began to explain that he was building a team, a family of dragons. If they were willing to stand with him, he would give them the strength to fight, assuring them they wouldn't have to run anymore. Althea and Nyx exchanged a glance, processing the offer before nodding in agreement. Issei stood before the twins, holding 2 glowing rook dragon pieces in his hands. These pieces, infused with the power of Great Red, radiated with draconic energy, eager to bond with their new hosts. He explained that these pieces would make them stronger, turning them into dragons just like him, but only if they were ready for the responsibility that came with that power. Althea and Nyx nodded, their expressions resolute, ready to take that step. Issei focused, channeling the energy of the pieces into the twins. A brilliant light engulfed them, their forms shimmering as the dragon pieces worked their magic. The power surged through their veins, amplifying their already considerable strength. Their wings expanded, shimmering with both crimson and black hues, and their auras flared with newfound intensity. When the light faded, Althea and Nyx stood before Issei, transformed. Their draconic features were even more pronounced, stronger, fiercer. They were no longer just hybrids, they were dragons. Koneko, observing from the side, nodded in approval, stating they would make good rooks. Issei smiled, feeling the bond between them solidify, welcoming them to the team. Althea flexed her wings, a confident grin spreading across her face as she declared they wouldn't let him down. Nyx's eyes burned with fierce determination, promising they would fight alongside him, no matter what. Issei felt a swell of pride. His new team, his new family was growing. With Althea and Nyx by his side, he knew they could take on whatever challenges the future held. The group hadn't traveled far from the town when a sharp gust of wind carried the chilling sound of flapping wings, signaling they weren't alone. The remnants of the Cows Brigade, angered by their earlier defeat, were returning this time with reinforcements. The once quiet forest outside the town was suddenly filled with the flicker of magical energy and the faint shimmer of teleportation circles. Issei felt the shift in the air before he saw them, muttering to himself that they were back as he scanned the treeline, his boosted gear glowing faintly in preparation for the inevitable battle. Sona stepped forward, her stance commanding as ever, her calculating mind already formulating a strategy. She noted that the Cows Brigade wouldn't stop until they were all captured or killed, but emphasized that they had underestimated them. Koneko's fists clenched, her knuckles turning white as she prepared for the fight ahead, declaring they wouldn't win this time. Althea and Nyx, still getting accustomed to the newfound power of their dragon forms, felt the weight of the moment. Their wings twitched with anticipation, and their eyes gleamed with the draconic strength coursing through them. Althea glanced at Issei, her determination unwavering as she stated they were ready to fight and wouldn't run again. Issei nodded, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. The Cows Brigade would learn the hard way that they had crossed the wrong people. The battle began as the Cows Brigade soldiers emerged from the shadows, their numbers significantly greater than before. At the forefront stood a tall man clad in dark armor, his crimson eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Behind him, rows of soldiers lined up, each one brimming with dark magic and weapons at the ready. The leader sneered at Issei and his group, his voice dripping with arrogance, suggesting they should have stayed hidden. Issei's gaze hardened, the red gauntlet on his arm glowing brighter as he activated the boosted gear. He knew they had made a grave mistake by attacking innocent people, and now they would face the consequences. Without waiting for a response, the battle erupted. The air crackled with magic and the clash of steel as both sides collided. Koneko was the first to move, her speed and strength unmatched as she tore through the enemy lines with brutal efficiency. Each punch she threw sent soldiers flying, and with a swift uppercut, she knocked out an attacker who had aimed a blade at her. Sona stood at the center of the battlefield, casting complex spells with fluid precision. Barriers of light formed around her allies, deflecting enemy attacks, while bursts of energy erupted from her fingertips, striking down multiple soldiers at once. She commanded her team to stay focused, her voice calm and in control amidst the chaos. Althea and Nyx, now fully embracing their new powers, fought side by side. Their wings sliced through the air as they launched powerful attacks, combining their draconic strength and fallen angel abilities in a deadly dance. Althea conjured blazing streams of fire, while Nyx summoned black lightning to strike down their enemies, vowing they would not be captured again. At the heart of the battle, Issei became a whirlwind of power. His boosted gear amplified with each passing second, and his fists struck with incredible force. Drake's voice echoed in his mind, encouraging him to push further and reach new heights of power. Every punch he threw sent shockwaves across the battlefield, knocking multiple enemies aside. With a final devastating blow, Issei sent the leader of the Cow's Brigade forces crashing into the trees, leaving him unconscious before he hit the ground. The battlefield fell silent as the last of the Cow's Brigade's forces either lay defeated or had fled. The group stood victorious, though the weight of the conflict still lingered in the air. Koneko wiped her knuckles, her expression stoic as she remarked that their enemies would think twice before attacking them again. Sona adjusted her glasses, thoughtfully noting that this was not the end, as the Cow's Brigade would regroup and return stronger. Issei acknowledged her insight but felt a sense of victory for the moment. He turned to Althea and Nyx, who were still catching their breath, and praised their efforts. Althea smiled faintly, though exhaustion was evident in her eyes, expressing that they felt stronger and owed him for their freedom. Nyx nodded in agreement, promising they would not forget his help. Issei shook his head, insisting they owed him nothing, as they were now a team that fought together. A sense of camaraderie settled over the group as they gathered their belongings and prepared to leave the ruined town behind. However, as they walked away, Issei couldn't shake the feeling that something much bigger loomed on the horizon. The Cow's Brigade was not the only threat they would face, and with his new team forming around him, he knew they had to be ready for whatever came next. Their journey led them to a small village nestled deep within a forest. The village was quiet, its streets empty, and its homes showing signs of neglect. It was clear the villagers had abandoned it long ago, likely due to constant raids from groups like the Cow's Brigade. Despite the eerie silence, the village provided a safe place for them to regroup and plan their next steps. Issei stood near a crumbled fountain in the center of the village, lost in thought. He clenched his fists, recalling the chaos and destruction they had just left behind. He realized that the Cow's Brigade would not stop. They would keep coming until they destroyed everything he cared about. Sona approached him, her expression calm yet concerned, emphasizing the need to prepare. This was not a battle they could win alone, they needed allies. Koneko, sitting on the edge of the fountain, nodded in agreement, stating that the Cow's Brigade was too large, and even with Issei's strength, it would not be enough. Althea and Nyx exchanged a glance before stepping forward. Althea spoke firmly, revealing that they might know someone who could help. Before their capture, they had heard about a group of dragons and fallen angels who had banded together to resist the Cow's Brigade. Although they were in hiding, this group might be willing to join them. Issei's eyes lit up with a mixture of hope and determination, expressing that if they were willing to fight, they would find them. The journey to locate the rumored group was not easy. The path was treacherous, taking them through dense forests, across rocky terrain, and into hidden valleys. Along the way, Issei and his team encountered remnants of the Cow's Brigade, but their teamwork and growing strength allowed them to fend off each attack. As they traveled, Issei noticed the bond within his team strengthening. Sona's strategic mind and leadership skills complemented Koneko's relentless combat prowess. Althea and Nyx's unique combination of dragon and fallen angel abilities brought a new dynamic to their group. Together, they were becoming a force to be reckoned with. After several days, they arrived at a hidden cave concealed by a waterfall. Althea and Nyx led the way, their confidence growing as they approached. Inside, the air was thick with power. The faint glow of dragon fire lit the cavern walls, and the sound of wings echoed in the distance. A tall figure emerged from the shadows, a dragon-fallen angel hybrid with golden scales and radiant black wings. His piercing blue eyes scanned the group, and a low growl rumbled in his chest, questioning who dared enter their sanctuary. Issei stepped forward, unflinching, and stated their purpose. They were there to ask for help against the Cow's Brigade, who was targeting anyone opposing them. They could not fight alone. The hybrid narrowed his eyes, his gaze shifting to Althea and Nyx, recognizing them as lost. Nyx stepped closer, steady in her voice, explaining that they had been captured but were saved by Issei, who was the reason they stood there now. The hybrid studied Issei for a moment before nodding, acknowledging his strength but reminding him that trust was not easily earned. If you want our help, you'll have to prove you're worthy. The Trial of Fire. The hybrid, who introduced himself as Kale, led the group deeper into the cave to a massive underground chamber. The air was thick with heat, and molten lava bubbled in pools scattered across the floor. Kale gestured to a glowing circle in the center of the chamber, explaining that if they wished to earn his allegiance, they must pass the Trial of Fire, a test of strength, resolve, and trust. Issei glanced at his team, determination shining in his eyes, and declared they would take on the challenge. Kale raised an eyebrow, informing them that the trial was not for all of them, but for their leader alone. Sona stepped forward, asserting that it was unfair since they fought as a team. Kale shook his head, stating that a leader must prove they can endure the flames of adversity alone to truly lead others. Issei nodded and stepped into the circle without hesitation, ready to face the trial. As the trial began, the chamber filled with roaring flames, and spectral dragons appeared, their forms shimmering with fire and light. Each one attacked Issei relentlessly, testing his strength and resilience. The flames burned, but Issei stood firm, refusing to back down. Draig's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to push forward, and Issei vowed he would not lose. The trial was not just a test of physical strength. It delved into Issei's mind, forcing him to confront his fears and doubts. He relived moments of betrayal, pain, and loss, but each time, he pushed through, his resolve unshaken. A new alliance forged. When the flames finally subsided, Issei stood in the center of the circle, battered but unbroken. Kale stepped forward, respect evident in his eyes, and acknowledged Issei's strength, stating they would fight alongside him. The group of hybrids emerged from the shadows, their numbers far greater than Issei had anticipated, each radiating power and determination. As they left the cave, Issei felt a renewed sense of purpose. With his team growing stronger and new allies by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The calm before the storm. The night air was thick with the lingering scent of battle ash and the faint aroma of burning wood. The village that Issei and his team had liberated from the Cow's Brigade still bore the scars of war. Buildings lay in ruin, streets were littered with debris, and the frightened eyes of the survivors peered cautiously from their hiding places. For them, the nightmare was over. But for Issei, it was just the beginning. Standing in the village square, he gazed at the flickering flames of a bonfire that the villagers had lit in celebration, feeling the weight of his growing responsibilities. Draig's voice rumbled in his mind, acknowledging his efforts but reminding him that this was only the start. Nearby, Sona, Koneko, and the newly rescued twin dragon-fallen angel hybrids Althea and Nyx stood together, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of the fire. Despite their exhaustion, none of them had let their guard down completely. Kale, the golden-scaled dragon warrior who had been the twins' protector, stood beside them, his piercing gaze locked onto Issei. Kale complimented Issei on his performance but questioned whether he truly understood what he was now. Issei, confused, asked for clarification. Kale explained that while he called himself the Red Dragon Emperor and wielded immense power, he fought like a human, reacting and relying on brute force without fully embracing what it meant to be a dragon. Issei clenched his fists, demanding to know what Kale meant. Althea smirked, folding her arms, and stated that Issei was still holding back. Nyx added that they had seen many warriors who relied solely on raw strength. They burned brightly but eventually burned out. Sona adjusted her glasses, emphasizing the need for them to train together to function as a unit against the Cow's brigade and any other threats. Koneko, who had been silent until now, spoke up, stressing the importance of building trust and learning to move as one. Kale nodded approvingly and suggested they begin their training. Trial by fire. The training begins. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight stretched across the sky, their training commenced in the ruined village, which became their battlefield. Issei faced Kale in one-on-one combat, testing his raw strength against the seasoned dragon warrior's calculated techniques. Kale's golden claws moved with terrifying speed, forcing Issei to dodge, counter, and think several steps ahead. Every mistake he made was met with a swift response. Koneko and Nyx engaged in a fierce clash, their speed-based fighting styles creating a blur of motion. Koneko's raw strength met Nyx's aerial agility in a display of precision and power, with neither giving the other an inch. Sona and Althea battled in a contest of magic. Sona's precise water and wind spells clashed against Althea's wild draconic flames, turning the village square into a storm of fire and mist as their spells collided, sending dust and debris flying. The training continued for hours, each session more grueling than the last. By the time they collapsed around the fire pit that night, their bodies were sore, their breathing ragged, but their spirits remained unbroken. Issei exhaled, staring up at the sky, acknowledging the intensity of the day. Kale smirked, reminding him that strength does not come easily. The trial of the true dragon. As the others rested, Kale motioned for Issei to follow him. They walked away from the village toward an ancient stone circle at the edge of a nearby mountain. Kale informed Issei that he had potential, but potential alone was worthless. He must undergo the trial of the true dragon. Issei frowned, inquiring about what the trial entailed. Kale's eyes gleamed as he explained that it was a test of soul and spirit, promising that if Issei survived, he would awaken a power beyond anything he had ever known. Taking a deep breath, Issei declared he was ready. Kale activated the ritual, and in an instant, the world around Issei vanished. The realm of shadows and fire. Issei found himself in an endless void, the air heavy with the roars of ancient dragons. The ground cracked beneath his feet like molten glass. From the darkness, a colossal dragon-vampire hybrid emerged, her deep crimson scales and piercing golden eyes exuding an aura of raw, untamed power. She acknowledged Issei's arrival, and he swallowed hard, asking who she was. The dragoness smirked, revealing her identity as Valeriana. Issei felt a surge of energy as Valeriana's presence enveloped him. She extended a claw, and memories of ancient battles flooded his mind, dragons ruling kingdoms and wars that reshaped the world. She revealed that he was not merely a wielder of dragon power, he was destined to be a king. The world around him erupted in golden fire. Power coursed through Issei's veins, transforming him. When he opened his eyes, he was back in reality, but everything had changed. His aura shifted, his eyes glowed golden, and his scales became sharper and more defined. Kale observed him with approval, acknowledging his first step toward true dragonhood. Sona and Koneko sensed the change and exchanged glances, recognizing Issei's newfound strength. Issei clenched his fists, feeling the immense energy within him, declaring that this was only the beginning. Kale smirked, warning him to prepare for the real battle that lay ahead. 3 days had passed since the valley town had been liberated from the Cow's brigade's grip. Rain had fallen steadily, leaving the streets damp and reflecting the pale morning sunlight. The village square, once silent and lifeless, was now vibrant again. Blackened ruins had been replaced with freshly laid stone and wooden scaffolding. The aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the lingering scent of charred timber. Somewhere, a lute played a gentle tune, and merchants called out to sell their goods. From the upstairs window of the rebuilt tavern, Issei leaned on the sill, watching the scene unfold. His red eyes glowed faintly, a sign of his bond with Valeriana. He felt a sense of hope as he observed the villagers smiling once more. Inside, his team gathered around a massive oak table, covered with rolled-up maps, handwritten notes, and enchanted crystals pulsing with detection spells. Sona sat at the head of the table, her posture straight and commanding. She had organized the maps, marking areas of confirmed brigade activity in red ink. She pointed to a mountainous region on the map, emphasizing the need to address the multiple Cows Brigade outposts there. If left unchecked, they would regroup and threaten the village again. Koneko, sitting sideways in her chair, acknowledged the situation, suggesting they hunt the enemy before they had the chance to regroup. Althea, relaxed with her boots on the table, expressed her desire for a challenging fight, while Nyx, standing near the window, exuded confidence, eager to see the enemy's confidence crumble. Kale proposed they strike at the enemy's strongest position first, ensuring their victory by cutting off the head of the serpent. Issei stepped forward, pointing to a marked location on the map. Fortress Dravik, built into the tallest peak and shielded by magic, was their target. Taking it would cripple the enemy's control over the entire sector. He reminded his team that they should expect unfair tactics from the enemy, just as they would employ their own. They set out at dawn, the trail winding through misty forests and steep valleys, where the sound of rushing rivers echoed like distant drums. The weather grew colder as they climbed, the air sharp with winter's bite. Nyx scouted ahead, while Althea kept pace with Koneko, teasing her with playful jabs. Sona traveled in a shimmering magical carriage, and Kale brought up the rear, his presence a protective shield for the group. As they entered a narrow canyon, the atmosphere shifted. Issei sensed something was amiss, and Koneko's ears twitched in agreement. Suddenly, figures emerged from the cliff faces, cloaked in black steel, their insignia a coiled serpent devouring a dragon's skull. Their leader stepped forward, his voice distorted through his helm, declaring that Issei's interference would end there. Issei stood firm, ready to confront the threat. The first strike came from above. A spear of black fire hurtled toward them. Acting swiftly, Issei activated his dragon gear, catching the spear mid-flight and reducing it to dust. He commanded his team to scatter. Koneko moved with incredible speed, taking down an enemy mage before they could react. Sona conjured a wall of water to intercept a barrage of arrows, freezing them and sending them back at the archers. Nyx dove from above, unleashing lightning that incapacitated multiple foes. Althea joined her sister, unleashing a stream of molten flame that turned the nearby stone walls to glowing orange. Kale charged into the front line, his clawed gauntlets tearing through steel shields as if they were mere parchment. The masked leader attempted to retreat, but Issei appeared before him, his presence imposing like a mountain. The leader hesitated, defiance evident in his posture, but the weight of Issei's aura compelled him to speak. His voice was strained as he revealed the location of the fortress. The tallest peak. Draviksma. You'll never. Issei's intense gaze silenced him, leaving a promise of confrontation hanging in the air. By nightfall, they stood at the base of the mountain. The fortress was carved into the sheer cliff, its black stone blending seamlessly with the mountain itself. Massive golems of obsidian and dragon bone guarded the gates, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. Sona focused her attention, recognizing the challenge ahead. The constructs were impervious to conventional attacks, and they would need to dismantle the protective wards. Issei cracked his neck, a grin spreading across his face as he prepared for action. Sona summoned a dense sphere of water that warped the air around it, using it to absorb the golem's fiery breath before shattering it into freezing shards. Nyx and Althea combined their powers, with lightning superheating Althea's flames until the stone beneath the golems fractured. Kale seized the opportunity, tearing into the fractures and removing large chunks of stone with sheer strength. Koneko slipped through a gap in the wall, deftly disabling the gate's internal locking runes. Issei stepped forward, golden energy swirling around him. His dragon burst erupted in a beam so powerful that it vaporized the gates, leaving molten edges dripping onto the ground. The fortress fell room by room, the air thick with the scent of burning oil and shattered stone. They finally reached the war room, a vast chamber filled with maps, coded scrolls, and stolen magical artifacts. Issei slammed his gauntlet fist on the table, scattering the enemy plans. This was just the beginning. One fortress had fallen, and many more awaited. Kale stood at his side, affirming their resolve. They would keep moving forward, this victory marking the first of many. As the team gathered in the flickering light, their bond deepened. They were no longer just allies, they had become the dragon's vanguard.